On behalf of Access to Integrative Medicine Health Institute, also known as AIM, and the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, welcome to A Mindfulness Experience, everyone. AIM is a nonprofit organization with a mission to provide vulnerable and low-income communities with access to whole person health and wellness. GW provides professional development, education, and community outreach to improve health and wellness. Today's facilitators are Eleni Pallas, who is an executive coach on the leadership development and team culture design, or rather and for the organization Leaders for Good, and Thompson, a certified medical Reiki master and a health science writer and editor. So now I'll turn everything over to Eleni.
Thank you, Janet. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. Since you had talk about Russia and hospitals, I'll have to give you my story. When I used to work in the corporate world, I traveled extensively and I had a lot of projects in Russia. In one of my trips, I was going to see Aeroflot because I used to work for a telecoms company who sold, things to companies. And we went to Novosibirsk, which is the capital of Siberia, in February. Okay, so it snows like every hour. It snows. God knows how many.
In February, who was so? Because this is like it's nuts. I wouldn't go there in February. Well, it's minus Celsius, like minus 20, 30.
I had to buy a coat to be there because I didn't have this kind of clothing. And unfortunately, we get there and en route to the meeting, we were in a car accident, which landed me 3 months in the hospital. I was 15 days in the hospital in Russia, nose bleeding, like things, had serious injuries in my body. And because the airports were closed, I couldn't fly out. So I was stuck there. Nobody could come. The team, I was supporting someone else's project at the time. And the team leader left for the first flight to London. And I was alone there. Luckily, they had translators and I could, because my Russian was not so good at the time, or it isn't anymore, but it was a traumatic experience. And I was just hearing people say that, when I was living in Paris at the time. So when the medevac came with the doctors, the Russian doctor was like, oh my God, what are all these bags? What do you have there? And it was really interesting for them. But for me, I realized you cannot import morphine to Russia. You cannot, there's not so much painkillers in that country. And I just felt an immense sense of gratitude that I live in a country that has lots of pain meds, but also that Russians are so resourceful and so generous and so loving. I'll never forget that in that sense. I couldn't have been in a more generous place in how I was treated, knowing all kinds of challenges they have and being there. So that's my story. And after that accident, I actually changed my career. It was like this last ditch, effort in really wanting to do something different. And since then, I support doctors and nurses in hospital settings and in organizational contexts. So it's my life story of how I pivoted into something that I love, and just remembering that accident in a good way now after healing. It took me a while to get out of there, but it was good. So that's my story. It was very interesting. Now, I would like to share with you a tool. Since I only have 10 minutes and I already spent a few sharing this story, Janet will give you access to this document, later, so you have that. But I'm going to show it to you now, and I'm going to share something that I have found really useful as I've learned about change, about wellness, and how I could improve my own self and those of my clients. Now, do you see this document in the front? If you want to go on your picture, I think you have 3 dots, and then you could put pin if you want to see this as a large image. Do you see this image I'm showing? Okay, you show, okay, you do. So this is what I'll call a triad. It's actually reflects the internal architecture of our being. We think, we believe, we assume, we have values, and we have feelings, and we take action, we react, we respond. So basically the thought, feeling, behavior triad represents, it's a pictorial or an image that we can use to represent what's going on inside us to help us if we have a problem. So let's say we are, well, I'll go first to say, these are usually studied as separate, like cognitive therapy, study what you think, emotional intelligence, behavioral modification. And most people learn about these or think about these in separate ways. And what I noticed when we realize that, of course, they're linked, and we learn how they're linked in our experience, it becomes a very powerful tool. So before I go to a simple example, I want to say that these triads, when we start drawing them out, like what do I feel and what do I have to think to feel that way and what do I do, and I start using them for myself, I can start to choose how to respond to something that I'm experiencing that might be challenging or might be exciting. Now, we are socialized to think that the only things we can control are, or what we can control, are what other people say about us or what they think about us or how we look on Zoom or things like that. But I'd like to say the only things we can control and regulate are what we think, what we feel, and what we do. And when we start to notice the patterns of our thinking, feeling, and doing, because we all have them, and when we start to regulate these, we actually become more confident and we feel more in control amidst uncertainty, which is certainly the situation we find ourselves more and more in. Does that make sense? Before we go on, anyone have questions? No. All right. I'm going to share something else, an example I created, just to show you how it would look. Do you see my screen again coming up? Okay, good. So this is an example of a triad, and what you can do to use it is you could start with either how you think, how you feel, or you behave. But let's say we start with emotions. Like a lot of people I talk to are feeling anxious and worried and fearful in face of elections. Okay, so that's something big we can control by okay, sorry, I better not use that one. I decided at the last minute I'll use a health-related issue. I can be anxious and worried and fearful about something that's happened to me. And I actually feel that way because of the way I think. So it's an important point to share, like our emotions are triggered by thoughts, usually judgments. Something's good, something bad. If I'm anxious and worried, I can wonder, what is making me anxious? What triggers my anxious and worried feeling? Well, I have a health problem. It's in my genes. I can't do anything about it, or it's too late. It's already happened. That might lead me to give up trying to get healthier, to eat irresponsibly and say, well, one more cookie won't kill me. I don't have to get off of sugar totally. Or I say it's too cold or wet to go outside, and I can kind of respond in ways that don't really help me. Does that make sense? Now, if I change this dynamic and I start to say, okay, how do I want to feel? I want to feel happy. I didn't make the drawing, but I want to feel happy. So if I feel happy, how do I have to think to feel happy? Or to feel open. Let's say I have a medical challenge, or I have, aches and pains from arthritis from my accident. And I could say, I don't want to feel anxious and worried that it's going to get worse. I want to feel like calm and accepting. What might I think to feel calm and accepting? Anyone want to share? You can unmute yourself if you'd like. Or share in the chat. Anyone?
You could think, I want to control stress because that makes my pain worse.
Excellent. Yes, I want to control stress because I know stress makes my pain worse. I can say, I can handle this. I can handle it. I know what to do. There are some things I can do to control the pain, let's say, of arthritis. I can do something. And then my behavior will say, I will actually do something. I'll take action. So all of these are related in actually our health and well-being. So yes, the positive, grateful, hopeful, excellent. So in other words, if we start noticing what we think and what we feel and what we do in response to situations we face ourselves in, we feel more in control and more confident that we can handle things. When we're noticing habits that don't help us or feelings that don't help us, or we ruminate about an illness or about upcoming elections, we can start to question it. So this tool is an amazing awareness tool that we can use to start to notice our patterns. Like, do we tend to get anxious? Do we tend to get worried about something that feels out of control? Do we tend to give up or say, oh, one more cookie won't hurt me? Do we tend to say, I can't do anything about it? Whatever it is, this little tool is very simple and very obvious, but it's remarkable how you could use it to question feelings you may have that you may not understand or you may want to transform out of, habits you have, reactions you have, thoughts that maybe are going or continuing in your mindset. So this is my gift to you, to invite you to start using it, especially when you would like to engage in change. You'd like something to be different in your life. You'd like something to be different in your experience of life. And that way you can start to get to know yourself in a different way. Some people, use this as journaling. Instead of journaling and expressing thoughts fully, they use these, say, what was I worried about today? Or what was I feeling today? Or what did I do today? And then they start using these triads, and even in a couple of weeks, can see some patterns. And then it's so curious to say, oh, I have a pattern. Interesting. I had anxious on every triad this week. Let me think about that. What could I do to address that? What could I do to contemplate it? So this is the tool that I'd like to invite you to use when you'd like to affect change in your life, vis-a-vis the things that challenge you and the challenges we have in our world and country, in our context today. I'll stop sharing, and I'm wondering if there are any questions or comments I can respond to before my time is up. Anyone want to ask a question or make a comment or? Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I wish you well, and I come every so often to these events, and I thank Janet and the others to hold them up. And I am here. You can call me anytime if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Eleni.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I think we have a little bit time for questions, right?
Yes.
Maybe
Great.
maybe 3-5 minutes. So if anybody, that's not just Eleni, if anybody has any burning question about updates on COVID or anything like that. I don't have anything prepared this week, just so that we don't take up more time, but if anybody have questions.
I was wondering, would you like to share, Eleni, what you started to about the election and how what you might be doing to share the anxiety about that?
Yes, thank
as we wait for Wednesday.
Yes, as we wait, we wait. And I think a lot of us feel anxiety because, and I would posit that we think certain things that create anxiety, such as the people I've spoken with think it's going to turn out badly. We might have civil war. Nobody listens to each other. We're polarized. I have no power. I voted, but what if it's not counted? And then what we do, or the people I spoke to do, they worry. They watch the polls and the news endlessly. They criticize people who don't vote in the way they think one should vote. And this kind of triad or mindset gets it goes downward, right? Downward spiral. So what I thought, and a few people who we discussed this at length, is say, okay, what do we want to feel in face of upcoming elections? What would we rather feel? What's a feeling we'd like to feel, knowing that things might be hard? What do we want to feel? What's one emotion? Suzanne, do you have an emotion in your mind you'd like to feel?
Yeah, calm.
Calm. That's a great one. That's a great one. So to feel calm, what do you have to think? We can all share on this, but what do we have to think to feel calm about the elections?
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
I'd say I've done my part,
I've done
and I
it.
am not going to fill my brain with it. We tape the news. We watch it after it's taped and speed watch. Most of the politics stuff I won't even watch. I read the headlines in NewYorkTimes.com, and I live in Denver, so I get the Washington Post most, and I look at that, but I don't read the articles. I just want to know what's going on, but I don't want to get involved and have it fill up my brain to make me upset. It's not
Excellent.
worth it.
Boundaries. Those are boundaries. And it's like, I want to stay abreast. I'm not going to just pretend I don't live in the world, but I'm not going to go into the details, because the details are all the same in the news generally.
Worrying is not going to make a difference.
Worrying won't help. Okay,
As long as I've done my part. That's
good.
it.
Mhm.
So doing our part, it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay regardless of what happens. It's not going to be pleasant, maybe. It's probably going to be difficult for all of us, regardless of who wins. So the problems won't go away, but the way we respond to the problems can go away. So we can start thinking, okay, if I have boundaries, I don't watch the news and drive myself crazy and scare myself. I think it's going to be okay, even if it's going to be okay in the longer term, not necessarily the short term. I'm okay vis-a-vis this. I have friends, I have a home, I have food, like I'll look at what I do have that helps me stay resourceful. And then what do? When someone is criticizing me, I don't respond, I don't react. I say, good point, or I find a way to, let's say, go anti-polarized, bring people together, converse with people, do things that I can do, like get more involved or write a letter. I have to then think about, what could I do to stay feeling calm and resourceful and think that things are going to be okay. So if things are going to be okay and we're going to be okay, what could we do in face of the elections, at least between the next week or a few days or so that we can stay calm until even through the elections? Because we can't just like, oh, if it goes well, I'll be happy, and if it goes, I'll be miserable. It's like, how do I stay calm regardless of what happens? And it's the adjustment in the thought. Because I'd like you to test this for yourself. In any situation, when you have a feeling, did it come out of nowhere? Or did you think something like, I'm with my friends at a party, I'm happy, because I judge the party as fun. I'm very anxious because I watch the news and I'm worried about who's going to win. I'm thinking about certain things that create or surface or stimulate certain emotions. So whenever you're in an emotional state that you don't want to be in, you question what you're thinking, and that'll help you. So you start to say, yeah, things are hard. We have to face it. A lot of things are hard. What could I do in my sphere of influence, who I know, who I could meet, who I interact with, to create the world I want us to live in? And each one of us influences a lot of people. Even if we know a few people, this is energetic, right? You can tell when someone's happy and excited and when they're very cynical and depressed and powerless, right? So our energy also affects each other. So we can really start to act the way we'd like to see the world. And when people are maybe from another viewpoint and criticizing or making arguments, we're like, let's discuss it. Let's respect everyone's opinion. So this is one way of using these triads of saying, oh, if I want to feel calm, what do I have to think and do to feel calm? Does that help?
Thank you, Eleni. This is great. So I just want to address, there's multiple questions about the COVID. So before we move to the mind-body aspect. So Sarah is asking about realistic timing on a vaccine. You all heard that Pfizer was getting ready to start on November 1st, and now they're saying that's not happening. It's pretty interesting. They didn't have enough patients. They claim they vaccinated enough people, but nobody got sick. I don't know if it's a good or bad, but so it's at least a month delay for sure. But by the way, that's just the first data coming out. That doesn't mean that the vaccine is going to be ready immediately for the delivery. I think anticipating vaccine delivery for people before early next year is unrealistic. So I don't know. Keep asking me the same question every week, I guess. That's all I can say. Update on COVID vaccine trials. So that's that. Do you think we'd be able to get vaccine more easily in the area? If this relates to COVID, I don't actually know. I guess Trump made it clear if he wins again, he made it clear he will leave this up to the states to handle the vaccinations. If Biden wins, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see whether there's going to be a specific state problems or they're going to try to implement some national initiative for distribution. Again, no answer. Fauci's prediction, I think it's very conservative that we won't go back to normal till 2022. I don't think we'll go back to normal for many years in many aspects. Of course, it's not just because of the multiple businesses are going to be out of the business and everything is going to be different. But I don't think that this disease is going to be fixed with the vaccine. You hear me say this every time. Vaccine is going to be only a part of the solution, given that our country is not interested in a uniform preventive measures, and substantial parts of the country don't even believe the problem exists, or they don't believe that the masks and other preventive measures are a solution. So chances are we're not going to get to a point of a complete recovery until the virus circulates, and that's really hard to predict. I mean, that could be here to stay for a very long time. And then I think we have one more question about the air travel safety. I think there's a lot of conflicting data on that. I recently reviewed the article stating that if everybody masked on a plane with the way the airplanes have the air circulating, with the air constantly creating negative pressure out, that the risk is relatively low. I still think that the risk highly depends on the length of time spent in the enclosed cabin. So short flights under 2 hours are probably relatively safe. You're talking about the long flights, they're probably less safe. They also will tell you that if you're using, there are probably different levels of the way you can protect yourself. So the N95 would be better. So I think I mentioned that over and over again. If you're getting on a plane for any length of travel, try to be with N95 and then a basic shield. Now, the good news about the shields, they seem to be a problem if you don't have a shield, only when you're very closely in contact directly to the person. Because the particles, if they aerated and spread through the air, chances, I think, extremely small that somehow 1 or 2 viral particles end up in your eyes and will infect you. I think the issue is really a droplet spread, with the shields being important. That's why the mask, the N95, would be better, because they are much better at filtering the particles compared to the regular surgical mask or cotton mask. So, but that's a very good question. I think I'm going to try to, I'm not going to be here next week, but in 2 weeks, I'll see if there's any more specific research on the airplanes. Last question, okay? And then we'll switch. And then if there are any more questions left should we avoid indoor dining at restaurant no matter what? I think it really depends on sort of how many people are in the restaurant. If it's only you and your friends, probably okay, and the servants. But generally speaking, I say probably the answer is yes. You should probably look for places that either have 1 or 2 things. Either they have some kind of a complete isolation system inside, like a cabin within the cabin, so to speak, or that you sit it distantly apart outdoors. And I know that a lot of restaurants are switching to that. Otherwise, again, if the restaurant has very few people in there and you absolutely must eat somewhere and you walk in and you see that there's no one around you for 30 feet, it's probably safe enough for you to eat there for, again, don't stay there too long. The length of stay is really important in indoors. The longer you stay, the higher the risk. And that has to do with the saturation of the particles in the area. So if you have a sick visitor, that person will stay there, say, for an hour, will saturate the area, and then will leave. If you come in before, no problem. If you come in after, it depends on how long you stay there and how many particles you inhale. That would be the degree of the exposure and degree of possible illness. The less, the better.
Okay, Misha, we're
Yep.
gonna wrap that
Perfect
up for
timing.
now and turn things over to Anne.
Okay. Hello, everyone. And Jeanette, thank you so much. I really am so excited and grateful for this opportunity. I know we've been talking about it for a while, and I had some personal family care issues come up, so I had to put it off. So I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. I appreciate it. To give you a little background, I am a Certified Medical Reiki Master, which means I am trained and authorized to work in clinical settings. I've worked in inpatient and outpatient situations. I've done pre and post-op Reiki for patients undergoing all kinds of surgery, including maxillofacial repair, bone resection, hip replacement, hysterectomy, and also for cancers, including cancer of the jaw, cancer of the tongue, cancer of the esophagus, and cancers of the ovaries and the breast, including a double mastectomy. And I also serve as an advisor on the board of the Center for Reiki Research, which is, to my knowledge, the only organization in the world right now that collects, vets, and summarizes peer-reviewed research on Reiki. And we have a protocol that we use to review the literature to make sure and to rank it to see if it was double-blinded, if it was IRB approved, and all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of research about Reiki. We don't yet know the mechanisms of action for Reiki, but we do know that it works in terms of having a very profound effect on people's nervous systems. It very quickly triggers the parasympathetic response, which is the rest, restore, and heal response. So it helps to reduce inflammation, it helps to reduce high blood pressure, it helps to reduce anxiety. It's been shown to reduce pain quite a bit, especially post-operatively. And it's also been shown and used quite a bit to help with physician and healthcare worker burnout. There have been a number of studies with nurses and people who are in palliative care settings that are experiencing burnout. And that, of course, is going to be increasing quite a bit. It has been already this year as a result of the pandemic and the extraordinary pressures being put on healthcare workers. One of our colleague organizations in the UK is called Reiki Medic Care. And of course, in the UK, Medicare means something different than it does here. It's not Medicare, it's medic, as in doctor, care. And they actually are initiating a program where they have trained Reiki practitioners that are providing remote Reiki for healthcare practitioners who are dealing with COVID. And of course, the Reiki practitioners cannot go on site to actually put their hands on the nurses and the techs and whoever wants to have the support, but they do sign up for remote Reiki. So I don't know how much you know about Reiki. It's hard to kind of give a framework for it in the traditional Western medical framework, but from the Eastern standpoint, almost all of the Asian traditions, whether it be the Far East or the Near East, are sort of based on the premise that there is a subtle energy that informs and creates everything that's alive, and that It's called by different names in different traditions: prana, chi, ki. In Japanese, ki is the equivalent of chi in Chinese, and that's the portion of Reiki. It literally translated, Reiki is divine source energy. And it was developed by a gentleman in the 1920s in Japan who was a scholar, a businessman, a bureaucrat. He traveled all around the world. And he was also a Buddhist and practiced very intense meditation, and had a period of time in his midlife where he went on a long, extended solitary retreat and meditated and chanted every day for a long period of time, and had one of those proverbial mountaintop experiences. And his practice of Reiki grew out of that. So anyway, that's kind of an overview of where Reiki was started and how it began. But I really didn't exactly want to do too much about Reiki with this. I was thinking about it for a long time, and it occurred to me just exactly what we've all been talking about and what Eleni was talking about, that the timing of my joining you all is just so pivotal, because it's at the confluence of this global health crisis and all of the sort of I would say, existential questions it has triggered for all of us. I think it's really got the potential to transform us in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways change how we look at society and how we do our work and how we do our civilization. But in addition to that whole pressure that's been going on for most of this year, we've also got the impending election coming up. And I think, as you were saying, you know, it's Eleni, as you were saying, it's really stressful for everyone. And I really loved Eleni's presentation, because you focused so much on those 3 points of the mind and the emotions and the behavior. And I loved what you talked about in terms of our thoughts really triggering our emotions, and how we can become caught up in our thoughts and we can ruminate. I just love that word, ruminate. And that's exactly, I think, what we're all at risk of now, and have been recently, you know, for the last 10 months. And I do think that we are in the midst of a really cosmic shift in not just our society, but around the world, in terms of paradigms and frameworks of reality that have been in place for millennia, that are starting to really shake and give way to a different way of perceiving life. And I see that as a positive thing. I think it's going to be a lot of turbulence. I think it's going to be a lot of turmoil. It's going to be a lot of insecurity. But in the long run, I think we're going to be, if we take a positive approach to this, and an approach that's conducive to love and to healing, I think that this can be enormously transformative. I mean, I think globally transformative. So what I really wanted to focus on was the stress that we're all under, and how important it is that we stay centered, because really our own feelings and our own experiences and our own thoughts are all we can control, you know. And I do think it's going to be a rocky road for a while yet. So there's really nothing more important every moment than being in your center and coming back to your center. You know, I kind of get the image of one of those punching bags that we used to have, the little inflatable things that looked like a clown, and it was weighted on the bottom, you know, so you could punch it, it would go down and come back up, it would go down and come back up. And I think that it's really important, particularly for those of us that are in the fields that are related to healthcare or to personal development, or to education and dealing with children. I think it's really important for those of us who are in those roles to make our own well-being the top priority. And it's really part of our sort of outmoded framework that says, I have to always sacrifice myself for you, but I'm not really doing you any favors if I'm not strong, if I'm not centered, and if I'm not in a place of rest and inner peace. So I can't help thinking that, you know, our whole world would be so different if our leaders and our law enforcement officers and our teachers and our parents were always, or most of the time, I mean, it's not realistic to always be in the state, but for most of the time were, had equilibrium, had equilibrium, you know, and didn't immediately react out of the fight or flight. They weren't always in the amygdala. I mean, I think that's a lot of what's happening with the Black Lives Matter issue is that, you know, with all this police violence, I think that it's such a gut level primal response based on thoughts and perceptions, as you said, Eleni, on the thoughts and perceptions. So, so anyway, with that in mind, I think I really wanted to do a little bit of work in the body. I think, Eleni, you did such a wonderful job of talking to us about the mind and how the mind and the emotions are connected. But I think the other element here is that our bodies are such a source of wisdom for us that we don't really listen to most of the time. And I think one of the best ways to come back to center when we're stressed and we're off balance is to come back to the body, to come back to where we are in physical space and the sensations of our body, because that brings us into the moment. And when you're in the moment, then it helps you to get balanced again and strong again. You know, the worry always happens when you're thinking of the future. You know, the fear is based on what happened in the past. And then we get caught up in that like a knot because we're not present in the reality of where we are right now. So I wanted us to do, if we can, some things together. And I sent a little handout to Jeanette, who can distribute it to you guys later. Came up with a little rhyme for 5 steps that I think are really useful to kind of intervene in the moment when we're finding ourselves getting more and more and more wound up in the anxiety, in the fear, in the anger, in the frustration, whatever those lower vibration emotions are, because we're all energy. Everything about us is energy. There's no real physical form. As you break it down and down and down and down, we're charged particles basically. And our emotions vibrate, resonate at different frequencies. And those emotions of fear or grief or frustration or despair or any of those actually have a lower vibration, a heavier vibration than joy, laughter, hope. You know, those have a higher vibration. So getting into your body and actually moving your body can help to shift the energy in a very palpable way. So if you can, I would suggest that you stand up with me. And, you know, I can't see all of you, so I'm not looking at you or judging you. And if you want to look at me and laugh and point, that's fine. That's therapeutic too. So I'm calling this the somatic reset. Somatic, your soma is your physical body and where you are in space, your sense of where you are in physical space. So something that happens when we worry is we get so much out in our heads, we're not in our bodies. So to kind of reset and come back to your body, stand up and, you know, swing your arms a little bit, move yourself around a little bit, get the joints moving if you can. It really helps, especially if you're feeling anxious or sad or hopeless, to stretch the side body. That particularly opens you up. So reaching up and then just gently reaching over to the side body, just kind of opening up the ribs a little bit and getting some fluid moving in your body, getting the joints lubricated a little bit. And it always helps to kind of like roll the shoulders around. We hold a lot of tension in our shoulders and our necks. Giving yourself a little self-massage is always good. Get the blood moving, warm up the tissues a little bit. And then this is a practice that my Reiki mentor taught me. Your energy field actually has a charge, and it can accrue, it can collect negativity. So if you imagine yourself maybe in India during the festival where they throw the paint, you know, the powder paint out everywhere, and just picture yourself being covered with this powder paint, and you're just trying to, you're having a good time, but you want to kind of get it off of you. So use your hands, and I'm going to back up so you can see me a little better. Use your hands and sweep very briskly down the outsides of your arms, then under your arms, and then across your chest, as if you're trying to just, and all the way down your legs, as if you're just trying to get this off of you, you know, or that you've got cat hair or something, you're just briskly trying to get it off of you. Just brush really briskly. Do that for a minute or two, and down the backs of your legs as well, across your shoulders, on your head. You just do a little bit of brushing everywhere, all the way down. And what you can do is imagine yourself brushing away what you want to get rid of. You know, brushing away the frustration, the fear, the anger, the anxiety. Just brush, brush, brush. And then when you're done, shake your hands. Your hands have energy centers in them called nadis in the Indian tradition. And that's why doing energy work is so powerful, because the energy does actually conduct through the palms of your hands, but it also can collect there. And when you're anxious, it's very natural that you start holding your hands in, you start holding your body in. So shaking your hands like this also helps to get rid of that negativity. So these are just physical things. You just stand up, sweep your body off, stretch, and shake. So it's the four S's: stand, sweep, stretch, shake. Another form of shaking that is very therapeutic, which I learned from a brilliant musician named Deva Premal, Premal. She sings chants, Hindu chants that are just exquisite. She combines traditional chants with a little bit more sort of popular sound. So I guess they're much more accessible for the Western ear, but she's got a gorgeous voice. And I heard her interviewed, and she talked about how important it is, of course, for musicians to be relaxed. You can't really play your instrument or sing if you're tense. Because I think, again, it's a vibration issue. You got to be able to be relaxed enough for the vibration to move through you, especially for her as a singer. So what she does, and this is where you can point and laugh if you want, but I love it. It really helps. And she actually just bounces. She just bounces, you know, just up and down like little kids do. You see children do this a lot, just bouncing, bouncing, bouncing. And one of the biological benefits of that is that it moves the lymph through your body. You know, our hearts pump our blood, and our blood circulates all the time, but the lymph doesn't circulate all the time. You have to move the lymph. So especially now, when we all really want to stimulate our immune systems, it's very important to bounce, to move, to run, to jump, to dance, to do anything to actually get that lymph moving in your body. So this has a biochemical benefit as well as just a psychological and energetic benefit. Okay, so do a little shaking until you feel like you're kind of like a lot looser and more relaxed. When you get to that point, just sort of sit whatever you're comfortable doing, standing, sitting, lying down, whatever, just rest and let that vibration kind of like settle into your body. Just settle with it for a bit. You might feel your heart slowing down a little bit after increasing. You might feel your breathing going back to normal. I can feel my circulation pumping better. I can feel my body buzzing a little bit. Just take it in.
Mm-hmm.
Just take it in. Let your body, you're coming back into your body now. These are all techniques to come back in to your body, to be present in the here, the now.
Mm.
And so after that, what I also like to do is explore the senses. You know, you're now in your body. You're now aware that you are sensate. And as a meditation technique, I mean, there's so many ways to meditate, but one of the ways I really like is with my imagination, to help my imagination. So I like to think of all the 5 senses and imagine each one from your favorite memory. So let's start with seeing. If you can just relax, sit, you can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever you want. Think of one of your favorite sights. For me, it's the Smoky Mountains, the ridges that fold after fold after fold into the distance. It might be for you a beautifully set table with crystal glasses and flowers in the center. It might be the sight of your loved one. It might be a garden, whatever it is, just picture that thing that you love to look at. And just imagine it in every detail. Just sort of soak in how good it feels to look at this thing you love so much. And then you're going to do that with hearing. The sound you really love. Maybe it's the way your dog snores. Maybe it's the sound of wind and leaves. Maybe it's the sound of an orchestra tuning up before a favorite recital. Just hear those vibrations in your mind. And then move on to favorite flavor, favorite food. It might be comfort food, something simple. Maybe for me, it's like spaghetti is my go-to. Or maybe it's a very sophisticated meal that you only get once in a while at your favorite restaurant. Or maybe it's just one thing, like a really ripe strawberry. Just picture everything about that. Imagine it and feel it and taste it, the texture, the temperature. And savor every bit of that. And then you move on to your smell. Kind of like the unsung hero of all of the senses. I love the smell of toast. I love the smell of cucumbers. I love the smell of fall leaves. Think about some smell that you really love and just breathe it in. Finally, think about feeling, just physical sensation. What's one of your favorite physical sensations? And right now, I'd suggest that we think of physical sensations that bring us comfort. Like, I love the feeling of fresh sheets. When they're cool and crisp, and then there's like a heavy woolen blanket or maybe a down comforter over on top of it. I just love that feeling. Or maybe you love the feeling of a silk scarf or a heavy sweater. Or snow falling on your skin. And after you spend about 5 or 10 minutes doing this, you'll find that your breathing has slowed, your joints have softened. You might even hear a very faint ringing in your ear, which is the sound of your body and your being vibrating. It's the sound of your own sacred energy, your own divine source. It's so cool. You can also listen to your own breathing. You can do what they call in the yoga tradition, the ujjayi, I think it's called, ujjahad, breathing where you audibly breathe. So you breathe and it sounds like the ocean. Like when you put a seashell to your ear and you can hear the ocean. just finished reading a very interesting book called Breathe. It's fascinating. A lot of research in it. But the most important thing to take from it, I think, is that breathing through your nose is so important. It's so vital to your body's health and well-being. And breathing slowly. And they found that the best pace for breathing, the optimal pace for just the right combination of oxygen to carbon dioxide in your bloodstream and all the various health benefits of the balance being proper, is to breathe approximately 5.5 seconds and breathe out approximately 5.5 seconds. And if you do it at that rate in the course of a minute, you breathe the full cycle in and out approximately 5 times. And as a mnemonic, I was thinking, we don't want to do the happy birthday song because, you know, we're all really tired of that and it's got bad associations. But I was thinking about something that sounds and lasts about 5 seconds. So if you breathe at this pace with me and think to yourself, I am safe and sound. So you breathe in, I am safe and sound. Breathe out, I am safe and sound. You do that, it gives you a rhythm to breathe by, and it slows it down to approximately 5.5 seconds. And if you do that for a minute or two, that too will drop your blood pressure, bring you back to center, and help you stay calm. Come back to calm. Because calm is our essence, basically. That is where our soul always lives. It's always calm. We just get distracted up here. And last of all, and I think I still have time, I hope. Yeah, I think I have 5 minutes. The other element of coming back into your body and triggering that relaxation response and getting into the vibration that's a higher frequency is sound. Sound is just pivotal to that. Sound, I'm sure you've done some sound healing over the course of these sessions, but I wanted to do some chanting for you because that's such a deep part of the Reiki tradition. Reiki is founded on 5 principles, and traditionally they are chanted in Japanese. And you can chant them for, you know, a minute, 5 minutes. Some people chant them for hours. Just the vibration of chanting helps to loosen clogged energy in your body, helps to bring emotions maybe buried, and brings those emotions up to be cleared out. It creates a vibration in your body that really brings you sort of into this wonderful frequency in the center. If you can kind of picture the double helix, you know, that's kind of the way it affects you. It brings you into that core, into that center. So for a couple minutes, I'm going to chant this. You do have it in your handout, but I can explain it to you at the moment. The 5 principles of Reiki begin with a phrase that applies to all of them, and that is Kyo Dake wa, which means just for today, or just in this moment. I Karuna, which means soften anger. Shinpai Suna, release anxiety. Kansha Shite, relish gratitude. Gyo o Hageme, seek integrity. And Hito ni Shinsetsu ni, which is show kindness to all living things. So for a couple of minutes, I'll just close out with that, and then we'll have questions if you want. I always like to start with my hands in the prayer position. When you put your thumbs against your breastbone, it actually helps to lower your blood pressure and calm you. It also helps you to feel the vibration in your body. Kyo dake wa I karuna, shinpai suna, kansha shite, gyo o hageme, hito ni shinsetsu ni. Kyo dake wa I karuna, shinpai suna, 感謝して行を励め人に親切に今日だけは怒るな心配するな感謝して今日を励め人に親切に今日だけは怒るな心配するな感謝して感謝して感謝して世を励め人に親切に人に親切にI wish you all peace and equanimity. And thank you very much for letting me share this with you.
Thank you, Anne. Does anybody have any questions for Anne?
There's a one question by Christine. I put an actual link about describing what happens when you're inside different locations and how masks and air filtration and airflow changes the risk. So take a look. I think it's actually pretty good. It looks quite evidence to me, and it's very easy to understand. It's in I put the link right now in there. So if anybody wants to, if you can't figure out, just email me. I'll send it.
Anne, sorry, Misha. Anne, there looks like there's a question from you about how do you feel feelings in your body if that's been difficult in the past?
Do you mean being able to feel was difficult, or the feelings themselves had been difficult?
If the person asking the question, who is Eleni, could
Yeah, I would say
Got it.
feeling it. So it's like, let's say you're angry, but you can't feel that in your body.
Yeah, that's very, very common, I think, because in our society, we live so much in our minds. And I would just say, don't worry about it. Just keep getting into your body. And when your body's ready, it will release it. I used to do, I was a nationally certified massage therapist for 10 years in the 90s and early 2000s. And a lot of times emotion gets locked in the body. And as you relax, either through massage or through meditation or whatever, those tissues start to open up, and the memory, the charge, the emotion that's stored in that area will be released in its time. It's not the sort of thing that you want to force at all, especially if there's been any trauma in your past. But it's very common in our society not to be able to locate our feelings in our body. It does come with time. And I can tell you one thing that I've noticed, it was kind of like when you were saying that your accident triggered such a transformation in your life. I personally have experienced, and I believe that we are spirit, we are non-physical, but then as our experience gets closer and closer, you know, there's like the soul is way out there, and then there are the thoughts that are a little closer in, and then there's the emotions, and then everything condenses down until it gets to your body. So the body will speak to you, but what it will do, if you have any issues that you need to deal with that you're not dealing with, it will sometimes speak to you by injuring you, or by making you sick, or by causing you to pay more attention. You know, it's kind of like it'll your body will say, hey, you know, I need some attention over here. And if you ignore it, it'll give you a little more. And then if you ignore it, pretty soon it's going to hit you with the 2x4. So it will talk to you, but you just do need to be patient and don't force it. You know, you don't have to really, it will come. As you relax more, it will come.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Misha, what was the name of the documentary we showed everybody a couple years ago? that was
Mhm.
just everything that Anne just spoke about is in this documentary that you can watch on Amazon and Canopy, and that's Canopy with a K.
Yeah, it's about John Sarno.
All the rage.
All the rage. It's about John Sarno's life. John Sarno, MD, who created this term tension myositis syndrome, and he was big. And so the movie called All the Rage.
Yes.
That's great.
The movie.
And the focus of the movie is the fact that is, as they called it, non-injury pain, or what?
Yeah, he called it the tension myositis syndrome. He basically was coining the term to describe somatization, sort of when you need to divert an unacceptable perception of reality into acceptable, which is pain. When you can't cope with a certain aspects of trauma or emotional uproar or stressors, and you make it into something that is okay to express, a back pain or whatever. And, you know, and I think what Anne was saying very precisely, when we lock that state and then we release it, suddenly you have this, you know, it's, for any body worker, it's a very common phenomenon where people on the table start sobbing and having all kinds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes there'll even be the release of the sympathetic charge buildup in the form of spasms, or, you know, like a sudden jerk or crying or sweating or something like that. The body will literally release that built up charge like that. I'm reading a really interesting book by a man, Rod Owens, who is an African-American Tibetan Buddhist Lama. And it's called Love and Rage. And he talks, his whole book is about how, particularly rage as an emotion, but obviously it's true of many other intense emotions, but how it really can speak to us. And he approaches it from a standpoint of meditation and from self-acceptance and from allowing the rage to speak to you and not pushing it away.
And on that note, I think we're ready to close out today's event. This has been
I'll put it,
y'all.
the book was called Love and Rage. I'll write it down here in the chat.
Please do. And so I'll just wait until you're done doing that.
And those of you, just everybody, I'm not going to be in next Friday. It's my own retreat time. Okay. So I will be with you in thoughts. And if you have specific questions to me, hold it until the week after. So unfortunately, as it turns out, I won't be with you after the election day. But again, I'll hold everybody's, no matter what the outcome's gonna be. But we probably won't even know what happened.
Hopefully we'll know. Hopefully.
We may not have any clarity by Friday, because they're gonna be counting the mail ballots for a long time.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Janet and Anne. Lovely.
It was our pleasure.
Thank you, Eleni. Thank you, Anne. We hope to see you back.
Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, before I let you go, next week, we're going to have a wellness talk by Kimberly Cabe. She's the nurse practitioner that was with us a few weeks ago. And Dr. Eileen Yeager, who it may still be in the meeting today, but she's a regular, is going to be doing the mind-body practice. Okay, so have a wonderful weekend, and I will end the meeting now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank